Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. My name as always is Jamie Hughes and today I'm going to be giving you my review of Halloween 2018. Now if you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. And as always in my videos, this review may include spoilers, so you have now been warned. I absolutely loved Halloween. It was fun, it was brutal, and at the same time it had this overhanging sense of suspense and unnervingness that just ebbed and flowed throughout this movie, because you never really felt terrified by this film, but you never really felt safe at the same time either, and I absolutely love that. But one of my favourite things about this movie is Jamie Lee Curtis and her performance as Laurie Strode. I absolutely loved it. I love Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's so nice to see her just slip back into that role with ease. She was brilliant. I loved what they did with the Laurie character, and that kind of moves on nicely to my next point, which is my favourite thing about this movie, without a doubt, is the story that we got between Laurie and Michael, where their stories just constantly intertwine and their characters are intertwining without them really even knowing it. Now we got this really great kind of addition to the Laurie story where we find out that she has essentially become a hermit for 40 years, and she has she's been preparing basically for the moment when Michael escapes. And what I really loved about the kind of Laurie character as well is that she almost and essentially evolves into the Dr. Loomis character from the original, where she now, is running around Haddonfield telling people to watch out because the boogeyman is coming. But another great thing about Laurie and Michael and their kind of interlocking and interweaving story is that they both flitter between being the victim and the victimizer. They both become the hunter and the hunted throughout this movie. But it just works so well, and I love that we got this really great kind of characterization flip throughout this movie with Laurie and Michael. I just thought it worked so well. And speaking of Michael Bloody Myers, so good to see him back, and so good to see him at his most brutalist. I definitely think this is the most brutal version we've seen of Michael, and I loved it. He was just walking around, knobbing about Haddonfield, just stabbing bitches left, right and centre. It was so great to see, and that kind of blends into my next point really nicely, is that the music in this film as well is exceptional. Obviously everybody loves the original score, but I really loved what John Carpenter did, updating this score for a modern audience as well. And the reason I just thought about that point is because there is that point in this movie when Michael gets the mask back on and then he's just walking around Haddonfield and the music kicks in, and I just got goosebumps. I loved it. I had a big old goofy, I can't even speak. I had a big old goofy grin on my face. I got goosebumps, as I said. I loved it because Michael was at his best and his most brutal. And what I really loved about this, I just loved the portrayal of Michael here, is that even when there was a point where he was perceived to be weak and it looked like it may have been the end for him, it was a little bit jarring, that moment where the doctor runs him over, and I was kind of like, uh-oh, like what are they going to do here? Is this the twist that the doctor's been in on it with Michael the whole time? But then, oh no, bam, Michael just comes out of nowhere and just kills him, and it just kind of elevated him to another just intense and terrifying level. I just love this movie. It was, as I say, it was brutal, it was fun. Yes, it does have an element of playing on nostalgia, but I think that worked. As I mentioned, kind of that story between Michael and Laurie, they use a lot of references from the first movie in this movie as well, but they are flipped a little bit. So for me, it was definitely one of my favourite points in the movie, so I'm kind of glad they did include these little nostalgic nods, is where Michael throws Laurie over the edge of the balcony and she's kind of lying there. He looks away, he looks, and she's gone. And I just thought it was just so well done and well crafted. I loved it. There was all of these nods, kind of musical nods as well. You still had the moments where Michael would appear and we'd get the diddly. It just worked so well for me. Honestly, this movie was just so pure, but just so absolutely like rotten and like brutal at the same time. I loved it. I think the only negatives for me, one of them's not really negative because I kind of get why they did it, and that was that the first act felt a little bit kind of a little bit slow for me, but I get why it was, because, you know, you had to kind of reintroduce and introduce a new audience to where these characters have been for 40 years. So, you know, I get why it was there. We got the reintroduction to Laurie and Michael, we got the introduction of Laurie's daughter and her granddaughter, so it's a little bit slow, but I understand why it was there. And then the only other kind of negative is that for how strong and great the Michael and Laurie storyline was, because it was just exceptional, I loved every single second of it. Kind of the subplot with Laurie's granddaughter did feel a little bit weak. It kind of felt a little bit generic. It felt like what we'd seen in horror films over kind of the past 10 years or so. You know, it kind of fell a little bit into a few horror film cliches as well, but it didn't really impact my overall enjoyment of this movie, because like everything else was just so strong. And yeah, I loved Halloween. It's just like, it was just a perfect continuation of the Halloween story. It didn't take itself that seriously. It still had those fun moments, and it was just great. I loved it. I just can't say like enough about this. I can't wait to go and see it in the cinema again. It was just great. And if you guys have seen Halloween, let me know what you thought about it, as always, down in those comments below. And if you did enjoy this video and you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always, I will see you in the very next episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. Ta-ra!